Checkpoints are fucked up.
They have
Ridiculous.
segregated roads for Palestinians and
That's crazy.
Israelis. That is
That's
wild.
crazy.
Like you have a
Right.
like Israelis have blue license plates and Palestinians have green
Mm.
ones. And like there's different roads assigned to each license plate. And it's just like
If
and
that's not
like
apartheid, I don't know what is.
it's it's a controversial statement to say that it's an apartheid state. It's like, what do you mean it's controversial? Like,
Right.
how else would you define this? Like,
You describe it.
Israelis live
Right.
under civilian law, Palestinians live under military law. Israelis are not walled in the cities they live in or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just
Right.
it is 100. And in fact, like there's a law, and I can't remember what it's called in the Israeli government, but man, but the basic point of the law is that Israel must be a majority Jewish nation, which sounds like a
Mm.
law that should not exist, if you ask me. I can't
Right.
imagine like that existing anywhere else in the developed world,
Anywhere
and
else in the
everyone's
world.
okay with it. Everyone's okay with it.
Right. Jesus Christ. Fucking, can
It's
you imagine the Constitution stating that it has to be a majority white nation like that?
right.
Like,
Could you
ridiculous.
it's just like, that's actually funny. The Constitution was written like 250 years ago. Even they didn't put that
They didn't even say that. Like, they didn't even say that. Like, I mean, these are the people, these are the same people that owned human beings. And
right.
like, you know what I mean? Like, and they still didn't put that in the
They
Constitution. It's
still didn't
insane.
put that in there. But the Israelis, like in
Yeah.
1974, like, oh, this is a great idea. And this is why. So
Yeah.
everyone always talks about the two-state solution. And I don't know where you stand on this, but they always say that
Mm.
the Israelis offered the Palestinians a two-state solution. They always turn it down. In reality, they offered them a
Yeah.
two-state solution in which they can't control their borders, they can't have a military, they can't have a navy or an air force. It's like that's not two states.
Right.
That's exactly what they have
That's not
right
too,
now. But
that's
honestly,
literally an apartheid situation.
yeah, yeah,
That's
it's a
an
it's
occupation.
a continuation of it's like a final recognition of an apartheid state. But I don't think a
Yeah.
two-state solution is the answer. I don't. I think it's
I don't either.
okay. Go okay.
I
Good.
don't either.
Here's what I say about that. I'm glad because if you have a two-state solution, what's going to happen? Let's say you actually create. Oh, first off, it's all weird because you have like three different sections. That's weird already.
Right.
And if you do that, you're just going to guarantee more fighting for the future between these two states. And like
Forever.
it should be one
Right.
state. It should be one secular state
Just
under a
one.
secular constitution.
Right.
That's what it should be.
Right. I think I fully agree. I think this whole two-state solution idea, like the reason we're in this mess is because of this two-state solution idea in the first fucking place. I don't understand. Like there's no feasible way this happens in which like it ends in peace. Because even if we were to concede a two-state solution, we still have exactly what we have now, which is
Yes.
Israel, a nuclear powered country with billions of dollars of military equipment and infrastructure and warfare, and then Palestine with nothing. Like Palestine is not going to be able to catch up to Israel in any meaningful way, and that's going to lead to any sort of relationship that Israel and Palestine have being like extremely one-sided. It's literally it's like where we are right now. So one state solution, I'm far more one state solution oriented, not only because it just makes more sense, but like from a like just an empathetic level, dude. I can't fucking imagine like just the fucking frustration that would arise in me if my home was invaded and then I was kicked out of it and they're like, okay, you can come back, but you get to keep your living room and I'll get the bathroom and fucking your bedroom. Like I have to now negotiate with you
Yeah.
on something that I already had. And one of the biggest best comparisons I could make it out to, which actually helped me to convince somebody who was a Zionist at the time to not be a Zionist, is that I told him, I was like, as an African, I was born in Cameroon, and Black Americans are obviously born in the United States, and Black Americans are indigenous to Africa. That's
Mhm.
their original home. That's perfectly fine. Black Americans are more than welcome to visit Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria. They're more than welcome to live there. They're more than welcome to set up businesses there and spend their days there. Now, Black Americans, it would be crazy for a million Black Americans to set up a government in like cut off 80% of Nigeria, set up a government, kick out the Nigerians staying there, and then be like, because this is our ancestral land, we have a right to set up a completely separate government, separate from the people that already lived here of our own accord, explicitly just black people from America as first class citizens, while everybody else being at best second class citizens and at worst not even recognized as
Yeah.
people. Like it doesn't make sense.
It
So that's like the one state solution helps in that, like, just get it, like it helps in that Jewish people can still attribute the land, like still be like, okay, we're indigenous to this land and we want to come live here, yada yada yada, without the expense of like having murdered and displaced all the Palestinians who have lived there, not only in the past but are currently living there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The logic doesn't make sense if you apply it to literally any other situation. Because
Any other situation.
any other one, the one I always use, I always say that the Native Americans are, the ancestral inhabitants of this land. Would you be okay if they just like, all right, we're gonna cut off all the like 90% of the country, every American citizen, you got to live in Utah or something, and the natives get everything else? What do you think you would do? Like, we're like, well, they were here 500 years ago. You would never go for that. And by the way, they were there 500 years ago. Like, Israel hasn't existed since like AD 70 for like 2,000 years. Right. It wasn't a country.
For a very long time.
It's insanity. Yeah. I just like it's just so fucking funny. And I think Bassem Youssef said this. No, it wasn't him. It was someone else. I remember, but I was so mad I didn't think about this because the whole point of the Zion, that's jokes and points that are really clever make me upset. Like, God damn, because I wish I would have thought they really did. But this guy was talking about how, you can say that the establishment of a Jewish state, I can see how people thought it made sense, especially after, the whole World War II thing. I get it. Like, I understand why some people would thought that. And Israel wasn't the only option. Like, I think Kenya was a place they were thinking about. And Argentina was another place they were thinking about. And they were thinking about, different places, and they settled on Israel. But the guy said, listen, if they were so, jazzed about giving European Jews a country, why didn't they just give them Germany? He said, why didn't? I mean, if you think about it, the Germans had just executed one of the worst atrocities on earth. Just hand it over to them. Well, it's because they didn't want Jews in Europe, because it's actually wasn't this benevolent gesture, because if it were, they would have the Jews were already there. Like, they were already in Europe. It'd have been a lot easier. But nope, we'll ship you off, to the middle of this desert somewhere. Yeah. And I was so mad. I think that because that was genius.
I think that's part of the history that we don't get taught in schools, is that, like, when you get taught about World War II and the Holocaust, they make it seem like it was a Germany problem. Like, oh yeah, Germany had this weird thing where they hated Jews. It was all of Europe. It was all of Europe. It was all of them. And they don't talk about that.
No, it's so fucking wild. And even with Germany, they don't even pretend it was a Germany thing. They pretend it was just like a Hitler tricked everyone thing. And that's not the case at all. I talk about Martin Luther a lot. And so for those of you who don't know, Martin Luther is the founder of, the Protestant movement in Christianity. Everyone was Catholic for the most part in Europe until the early 1500s. And in 1517, Martin Luther wrote the 95 Theses, expressing his complaints with the Catholic Church. By the way, his complaints against the church were great. Like, they were solid. Like, the Catholic Church I loved it. They were selling indulgences. And what an indulgence was like a get out of sin free card. So if you wanted to cheat on your old lady, you paid the Catholic Church, 50 shillings, and then it would be okay with God. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. So, and they were also selling, I can't remember what it was called, but something that you could pay the church to help your relative get out of purgatory. And so,
Hmm.
like there was even a slogan they had, like the guy would walk around with the cup. It says, "As soon as a coin in the coffer rings, a soul from purgatory springs." They had a song for it or whatever. So they were selling
Yeah.
an invisible product to like, oh, your dad died in a state of sin and he's going to be in purgatory 1,000 years. Hand over your paycheck and your dad will get into heaven. Like,
We
it was
got you.
just
Yeah.
horrifying shit. And so Luther rightly pointed that out. However, that's not the only thing Martin Luther wrote. Martin Luther also
Mm,
wrote a pamphlet called On the Jews and Their Lies.
mm,
Just the
mm.
title. That was just the title. Like it didn't get better,
Jesus.
from then on. But if you
It
read
said
it,
it didn't get fed.
if you
Yeah.
if you read it, I kid you not, it is a textbook guide to Kristallnacht. It is just saying Jewish people should not be trusted. They killed Christ after
Mm.
all. So what we need to
Oh
do
God.
as good white Germans,
Mm,
we need to burn down their businesses. We need to chase them out of
mm.
town, expel them from our land. And any who refuse to leave, we should put in labor camps. Like it's
Oh
exactly
my
what Hitler
God.
did. Like
Oh
and
my
so
God.
that I remind everyone was
Never heard of
400
that.
years before Hitler. So the
Mm.
anti-Semitism was already there. Like Hitler didn't just
Oh
create it
yeah.
out of thin air. It was there for a
Oh
long,
yeah.
long time.
Jews were expelled from Russia. They were like it's so much, it's so deeply baked into European history. There was like even during up until the moments leading up to the fucking World War II, there was the Nazi Party movement that was building up in Britain at the time, with Oswald Mosley, and how that was like a really popular movement. And literally and that's the thing, the only reason British aristocrats even, were upset with Oswald or upset with this idea of Nazism was the threat they posed to Britain and the monarchy, not because like it was anti-Semitic and anti-Semitism is
Yeah.
wrong. Like Europe has had an anti-Semitism problem for literally forever. And yeah, so to your point, like they didn't want him in Europe. They
They
thought
didn't.
Africa
They didn't.
these
Oh,
didn't want him.
King Edward. So in Britain, in the early 1900s, they had King Edward, and King Edward
Mm,
was he was king for a few years, but he ended up stepping down from the
mm,
throne because he married an American divorcee, which is just really funny. That it's just like that was such an outrage and such a scandal that the woman he married was not only not British, but she was an American who had been married before, and they couldn't. I was like,
crazy.
it's so weirdly quaint looking back on it now that anyone gave a fuck about
Right.
that. And so he stepped down, which I gotta say, like he really must have liked this lady. I think he's like, okay,
Literally, like
I
he
will
must have been fucking whipped.
yeah, or maybe he hated being king. Like I can maybe that too. I don't know. Like maybe it
I can
sucked, and
imagine that.
so he
I
stepped
can
down
imagine
from
that.
being king to stay married. But the King Edward was a Nazi. He was a huge fan of Hitler, like huge. Like
Mm,
he was attending Hitler's ceremonies and like watching what he was like. Hey, this Adolf guy, he's got a lot of good ideas going on, and so his
right.
brother, King George, ended up becoming king, which actually ties into our Joe Biden conversation because he's the guy from the King's Speech. For those of you who don't know, he had a really bad stutter,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
so he took years of training
Mm,
to try to get him to deliver because he realized the important. Anyway,
the importance
but
of
anyway,
speaking.
but
Yeah.
so we were pretty lucky that we ended up with an anti-Nazi king. We very easily could have had a pro-Nazi king of Britain.
Really.
And
That's honestly
another funny thing about this is that the Pope at the time. So when Hitler became chancellor, the first treaty he signed with any nation was with the Vatican. And the
mm,
Pope at the time was also a Nazi. The Pope loved Hitler. He thought he was great. And the Pope actually the Pope instituted a holiday or instituted Hitler's birthday like as a holiday to celebrate at the time. But that Pope ended up dying a couple of years into Hitler's rule. And he was
mm,
backwards. I had it backwards. So when Hitler became chancellor, the Pope was
yeah.
anti-Nazi. The Pope didn't like Hitler at all. That pope
Okay.
died a couple of years into Hitler's rule, and the new pope that came in was a huge fan of Hitler. And that's
Mm.
one of my arguments when people talk about, the decisions of God. It's like God could have like kept the anti-Nazi pope alive, but no, he killed he killed the anti-Nazi
Yeah.
pope and installed a pro-Nazi pope. I don't know what that says to you about the man
Honestly, I
upstairs,
have no
but
idea.
yeah, that's some wild shit. History's fun, guys. History's fun. Let's see.
It's really interesting, and it's not. They don't talk about it nearly enough.
No, because and also, but you talk about how the European people had such a strong bigotry against Jewish people. So did Americans. If you look at like newspaper clippings from the 20s and
Yeah,
30s, they asked them
dude.
like,
Yeah,
should we take Jewish refugees in from Europe? Like 10-15% of people support it. It's like, yeah. So yeah,
No,
it's
America had a Jewish problem too.
and it's why it's so upsetting to me that people like the term Judeo-Christian really pisses me off. Like I cannot
Yeah,
stand when they do that shit. Like a term that didn't exist till like 50 years ago after everyone found out about the atrocities against Jewish people and are like, oh, actually we're
yeah.
on the same team. Well, listen, for 2,000 years the Christian
You
church is
weren't.
filled with nothing but bloodshed and persecution and pogroms and expulsions of Jewish people. And you can't just be a Johnny come lately like, oh, we're buddies. No, it's
Yeah,
bullshit. It's
yeah,
bullshit.
yeah. It's so strange to me that this I started hearing it when the culture war shit started in like fucking 2016, and you start hearing all these political pundits talk about Judeo-Christian values, and they only used it to in a way to exclude Muslims and brown
Yes.
people. And
Yeah.
like these are all the same, the three religions
It's
that
all
have
the
the
same.
same origin.
Yes. Yeah.
It's all they're the same fucking thing.
They
They
have the
started being like,
same
oh yeah, well
patriarch.
the Jews are one of us.
Everyone descends
The
from
same
Abraham.
picture.
It's the same shit. Yeah.
Literally, it's all the exact same shit.